Everyone is looking for the next Giannis in the draft, a late lottery to mid-first player who is raw but ends up developing into an absolute dominant force that changes the direction of a franchise. The thing about a Giannis is, you can never actually predict it. No one knows who's going to make that crazy leap as a player and who's going to stagnate and become a wasted pick, but you can try to predict it. And the player people have considered the closest to what Giannis looked like as a prospect is Tidjane Salaun out of France. Now, their playstyles are not the same, but the narrative around their games is almost identical. Giannis was a raw player who had crazy physical tools but had so little experience or production against high-level competition that he was considered a pure home run swing project. Salaun is the same. His tools and flashes are on the level where you could see him becoming a true superstar out of this class, but his raw ability and inconsistencies also leaves it as a distinct possibility he falls out of the league in the coming years entirely. What version of Salaun will the NBA get? Today, we look at the pros of his game, the cons, and try to see what kind of player Salaun will be at the NBA level, and if he truly is worth that gamble relatively early in the first. So with all that, let's get into it. The shooting aspect of Salaun's game is one of the most intriguing points of his game overall, and a good reason why he must be differentiated with Giannis. Giannis as a prospect never looked like a good shooter. Some people assume maybe he could develop his shot, but he never showed real effectiveness around the perimeter. Salaun has showed numerous stretches of looking like the type of player who could be a real perimeter threat in the NBA. At his height of 6'10" with an over 7-foot wingspan, those are some dangerous intangibles to give a shooter. His shot is honestly really nice. The overall percentages aren't outstanding, but he gradually looked better and better throughout the year, and my expectation is that within the first few years of being in the league, he'll be making threes at a very high level clip. While it isn't perfect now, the flashes that you see from him are very impressive. His shot is super quick, it's at a high and consistent release, and his range extends a good bit behind the three-point arc. Overall, one of the biggest selling points on Salaun's game is the fact that he has the potential to be one of the most coveted archetypes in the NBA, and that is an oversized wing that can shoot the three consistently if he develops the right way. Salaun really doesn't do much shot creation at this point, which is unfortunate because obviously the star ceiling is non-existent if he doesn't develop that portion of his game. There's a reason he's considered a raw prospect, and that has a lot to do with this aspect of his game. It starts with his handle, which is below par. You don't ever see him dribbling to break down a defender, it just doesn't happen. He is, for the most part, a straight line ball handler that either goes all the way to the rim or takes like one bounce and pulls up. That's pretty much the extent of things at this time. However, one thing I found interesting was that on occasion he did show the ability to make some pretty creative moves. It was rare and he didn't often finish the shot, but him showing the capacity to attempt some more creativity on the offensive end gives you the slightest thought that it is possible he could really open up this part of his game at the NBA level. Realistically though, this is still definitely a weak point in his game, and he will almost certainly be relegated to a spot-up shooting role if he plays at all as a rookie, simply due to the fact that he doesn't yet have much ability off the bounce. Salaun is imperfect as a finisher and does a lot of the times miss finishes he absolutely should not be missing, but overall, I like where he is as a finisher. Like 80% of that is because of his physical tools, like I mentioned earlier. The guy is 6'10" with a 7-foot wingspan, but not just that, he is incredibly athletic. He's an above average athlete even for NBA standards and makes a lot of plays that make you think he should be one of the highest rated prospects this year off of his physical traits alone. He catches just about any lob pass thrown his way and frequently uses his combination of size and explosiveness to finish over defenders. It remains to be seen how this finishing translates year one. Like I mentioned, while he does have pretty phenomenal athletic traits, he is still a very young player, and because of that, it's fair to be concerned he'll have even more trouble converting at the rim in the beginning of his career based on his current struggles with touch. But after working on the strength and control in practice, I have confidence that his finishing will catch up and end up being a real asset for his game as time goes on. Salaun is, as of now, a very questionable playmaker. He probably will never be the primary playmaker of a team ever, even if he hits his highest end ceiling. But if you're going to be a star, you have to be able to competently distribute, and I wouldn't say he's at that point as of yet. He's still 18 years old, and you can tell that in a lot of the games he plays in. He does occasionally make a solid extra pass around the perimeter, and he can at times make a solid dump-off pass to one of his teammates, but overall, he's got a lot of flaws on this end that he needs to work out. For one, while he does at times make the extra pass, his shot selection can often be questionable. He does tend to force things at times which he absolutely does not need to, and often when he does decide to throw a pass, it goes to the other team. He gets in a rush and will jump in the air without an idea of where to go with the ball, and this is something you definitely want to see him work out at the pro level. The modern NBA is heavily reliant upon role players that fit in the system, and without realistic passing ability as a rookie, it will be hard for him to stay on the floor even if he shows to be above average as a shooter immediately. As far as defense goes, much like his finishing, we still see some issues here, but you can see where the appeal is when it comes to drafting him as a defensive-oriented player. Again, the physical tools, you should see a pattern at this point, really help him here. He's a pretty solid rim protector for a player who projects as a wing, and his help side work is good as well. Additionally, he's definitely above average for his height on switches, and can stick with guards pretty well. You project him to end up being an effective defender later into his career. Right now though, there's a couple of things you want to see him improve. While I mentioned he does a good job rotating over on helps, sometimes he overcommits a bit too much there, which allows his man to get open on a back cut. Additionally, while he does a good job on switches, you still don't want to see him end up on a guard full time. Only on occasion, as there are still numerous times where he gets blown by quicker guards. Finally, he has a tendency in over-pursuing steals and trying to cut passing lanes, which again gets him out of position. Overall, most of these flaws are coachable, so a team with a great defensive coaching staff should be confident in their ability to get him up to a solid level here. While I'd love to compare this man to Bruno Caboclo,
he's 2 years away from being 2 years away.
I think he's a better prospect than that and better potential overall. Realistically, a solid outcome for Salaun would be someone like Atlanta Josh Smith. Smith was a flawed but solid player who had a lot of similarities to what Salaun looks like. Both 6'9", 6'10 players who are great athletes and attack the rim frequently, and use their athleticism to play very solid defense. Smith, for example, was frequently in the conversation for all defensive teams while with Atlanta, and you'd hope that Salaun could get to that level as well. Additionally, Smith was not overly efficient from the floor and wasn't particularly secure with the ball, which are issues that Salaun currently struggles with. Smith, in the end, was really solid for a few years, and while his career isn't necessarily that superstar ceiling that people hope for from Salaun, it's a reasonable outcome and one that I don't think you could be truly disappointed with, especially with the boom-bust nature of him as a prospect, unless you reached for Salaun and passed up someone who ended up being significantly better. One thing to mention is, you're drafting Salaun for the potential, as, for example, his three-point shot has a much better chance of being efficient later in his career than Smith's ever was, if he develops the right way. So, in conclusion, Salaun has, in my opinion, the widest range of outcomes for any prospect in the 2024 NBA draft. He could be either the best player in the whole draft and multiple-time All-Star, or he could never earn real minutes and be back in Europe within 5 years. He's just so raw as a prospect. You're entirely taking him based off of potential, as he will almost certainly not be ready to play significant minutes as a rookie, unless the team that he goes to is absolutely terrible and is totally willing to tank for the year. He's the NBA equivalent of a mystery box. Teams see his physical ability, traits, and flashes, and they think this guy could be a star. And I don't necessarily blame them, but it's a risk you have to be willing to take sometimes, especially in a draft like this. I can see a scenario where he does something like Bilal Coulibaly did last year, was initially a late lottery mid-teens prospect, and teams got enamored with his potential and he rose into the single digits. The same thing could happen for Salaun. Now the question becomes, what high-risk wing prospect do you take him over? There's a solid 4 forwards in that general range I would consider high-risk, high-reward swings who aren't there yet as players but could become all-stars with development. That is, I would say Salaun, Holland, Buzelis, and Cody Williams. Salaun probably has the highest theoretical ceiling of the 4 but also the lowest floor, as he is the least pro-ready. I would clearly right now lean Holland and Buzelis over Salaun. I think they've shown more as players and have a higher likelihood of developing, and I think that right now I would go Salaun over Williams. Williams almost certainly will be better year 1, but I'm not buying his ceiling that much, and I think that taking a gamble on someone like Salaun is enticing for a team in the lottery who needs high-end talent. I think that leaves Salaun somewhere in the late lottery to me, somewhere around 10 to 14 where I would be comfortable with his value, but if he does go higher than that, he's still a prospect to get excited over, and I don't think that's necessarily a reach if a team is very confident in his ability, as the talent is there and he does have that star ability that many of these teams need. And with that, we'll conclude this video. Thanks to everyone for watching this one, I do appreciate it. If you did enjoy, please be sure to like and subscribe, as I should have plenty more draft-related content coming out in the lead up to the draft in the next week or so. But with all that, hope you guys enjoy. Hey, thanks again for watching this video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click on one of these videos here to see more.